Perth Model Railway Show was held on the 25th-26th of June 2022 at the Jewess Centre in Perth. As ever, it proved to be a very popular event, attracting large crowds. Ishinaka, modelled in N-gauge and exhibited by the Raven family. Ishinaka is an entirely fictitious layout created in Japanese N-scale, 1 to 150. The layout depicts a terminus station in a large town which has seen a rise in tourism since the discovery of healing thermal spa waters. The main line and the branch line enter from a 15-road traverser. At the rear, a tram track links the station and the Samurai Heritage Village. Baseboards are of the canopy type, where you look into rather than down on the layout. Track is Kato Unitrack with Tomix fine scale on the tram line. Structures are mainly Tomitech kits. The Samurai Heritage Village uses resin items rescued from our very first Japanese layout, Katami. The green scenery is from Woodland Scenics. Trees are sea moss with suitable scatter, and the back scene is hand painted. A slightly unusual feature is the dig, which has unearthed a large dinosaur skull and bone. In reality, this was unearthed from my garden. Stock is a mixture of Kato, Tomix and Micro Ace items. Occasionally visitors on tour from Sodor can be seen. Control is DC but operated wirelessly through the Blue Railways system. Thorncliff, modelled in 00 gauge and exhibited by Steve and Chris Saxby. Following our previous small layout Mortomley 1960s East Anglian diesels, which was built to test the concept of DCC automation, Thorncliff has been built to expand on the learnings, with multi-train operation, enhanced train detection, signalling and route setting. The scene presented is in the BR sectorisation period 1988-92 and is set in the northern suburbs of Sheffield. The station is of minimalist type, showing a reopened line and single platform on the long closed ex-GC line between Sheffield and Barnsley. Services are provided by the last of the first generation multiple units and the new sprinters, and these operate under computer control. To provide manual operational interest, the front of the layout represents the old goods yard, which is now used by the engineers for stabling run round, but a steel terminal has also been constructed that is served by trainload metals, and the last of the Speedlink trips from Healy Mills and or Tinsley Yard. Traffic in the yard is shunted by an 08 outstation from Tinsley or by one of the resident privately owned shunters, normally an ex-BR03 or Sentinel. The track work on the visible section is all hand-built C&L. That on the main line is flat-bottom variety with concrete sleepers to represent newly relaid track. But that in the goods yard is weed-infested bullhead on wooden sleepers. Buildings are principally scale scenes, suitably modified for their location. The layout is operated by the Merg DCC system, including accessory decoders for all points and signals. The automatic sequence is generated by a computer running JMRI connected to the DCC command station. Clayton End Signalman, modelled in 00 gauge and exhibited by David and Susan George. Clayton End Signalman is a mainly front-operated box theatre style layout. It depicts a fictitious out-of-town railway location in the Peak District and midway between the west and east main lines. The layout contains a signal box and MPD, mainly in a railway cutting, and is overlooked by a small cluster of houses and the Travellers' Rest public house. A new extension features a quarry and stone terminal. The layout title has a tenuous link with the ghost story The Signalman, by Charles Dickens in 1866, which may have been loosely based around the Clayton Tunnel disaster of 1861. It is rumoured that the unfortunate signal box custodian has been seen from time to time. Rolling stock and architecture mainly represents the period circa 1960s to 1980s, although later era stock will also feature in the 1990s-2000 cameos. The location is reached via tunnels and serves a nearby freight yard with locomotives, steam and diesel, stabled overnight in a 2-track shed. Whilst the main railway activity is freight related, some passenger workings occur. Sometimes the route is worked by cross-country motive power, and as a result a variety of stock can be seen. An 8-track traverser supports outbound via a front tunnel and inbound via a rear return loop. Points are controlled through the Mega Point system. Motive power is DCC, sound enabled, and controlled using an expanded NCE PowerCab ProCab system. Glendale and Yetsomuket, modelled in 00 gauge and exhibited by Edinburgh and Lothian's Model Railway Club. Glendale depicts a supposed ex-North British Railway branch line leading off the Devon Valley line that ran between Alloa and Kinross in Scotland. There is a village called Glendale in the area, at the south end of Glen Eagles, but the layout and village we have built is a fiction. Yetsomuket depicts a passing station on the Glendale branch line, which is also the site of a junction with another branch line and the exchange sidings of a private line serving a local industry. The real Yetsomuket is near Kinross and was never rail connected, so the model we have built like Glendale is a fiction. Like most of our layouts, the period modelled is the 1950s and early 60s. A challenge with modelling Scottish railways in this period is that the Scottish companies are not supported by the ready-to-run manufacturers. Some of the LNER, LMS and British Rail standard engines which ran in Scotland are available, as are many diesel classes, but not the pre-group steam locomotives which remained in service to the end of steam. Fortunately, kits are available for many of these classes. Because of this, many of the locomotives used on the layout are kit built, and some others have been converted from ready-to-run models. The rolling stock is a mixture of kit and ready-to-run models of types that would have been found in the area. In addition to the trains, the layout features working signals and hand-built buildings modelled on those characteristic of Fife. Control is conventional DC cab control. Signals are operated either by solenoid coils or modified miniature relays. Lewis Lake, modelled in ON 30 gauge and exhibited by Alan Aitken. The real Lewis Lake is in the US state of Wyoming, in the southern part of the Yellowstone National Park. The Lewis River is the lake's primary inflow, draining south from Shoshone Lake. The primary outflow of Lewis Lake is also the Lewis River, continuing south to join the Snake River near the southern boundary of Yellowstone National Park. The Lewis Lake layout is an ON 30 layout representing a fictitious dock town at the north end of Lewis Lake, Wyoming, between 1890 and 1910. The town takes in hunters and tourists from the south by boat and provides lodgings and supplies before moving them north to Yellowstone Park. The small town has a thriving fish industry, with the lake being well stocked. With the amount of people moving through the town, small industries have managed to get established. Scale and Compass Hardware and Aitken Foods are always busy, and Bowman blacksmiths are kept going, maintaining the railroad stock and local needs. The layout is operated using the ECOS digital command control system and the hands-free control module. All switches are controlled by servos and operated by a switch control panel. The buildings are super detailed, with every building and room filled with detail, lights and people as it would have been in real life. There's lots to see. Glendale, modelled in 009 gauge and exhibited by Dave Chapman. Glendale is the midpoint on a narrow gauge railway set in a remote highland glen. The line runs through a thinly populated area from the nearby village of Lost to the distant village of Far. It has a small engine shed, a goods siding, and is the site of the world famous Wee Green Welly shop, which does good trade due to the inclement weather and the need for waterproof footwear. Glebe Street, modelled in 00 gauge and exhibited by Elgin Model Railway Club. Set in 1963 and in urban Glasgow, somewhere northeast of the Maryhill area, although an imaginary location. The layout is on 2 levels, the upper level being solely passenger, terminating at Sockdenburn Station, part of the Glasgow suburban network. This is operated by a combination of loco-hauled trains and a DMU, as the transition from steam to diesel is underway. And although the line is not yet electrified, there is evidence of the start of construction for electrification. Other evidence that modernisation has started is that colour light signals and powered points have been installed, with the signals and points on the upper level being fully interlocked and following prototype practice. The lower level is entirely goods, featuring Glebe Street goods station, which extends across the main road, Glebe Street, into a foundry located beside a branch of the Forth and Clyde Canal. The yard is also operated by a mixture of steam and early diesels, as described for the high level. A tram operates from the front of the layout by the goods station, crossing the railway line into the foundry, under the high level station and round the back of the layout. The layout is DCC using NCE controllers, but with an analog 12-volt supply for points and signals. It is operated by 3 people at one time, one in the rear at the cassette, one at the end operating the high level, and 1 or 2 in front operating the goods yard. Communication is by bell codes and block instruments, and if necessary by telephone. Tullygarth, modelled in 00 gauge and exhibited by Stirling and Clackmannan District Model Railway Club. Welcome to our layout Tullygarth, set somewhere in the Highlands of Scotland, depicting an ex-Caledonian railway line, perhaps what the Calendar route might have looked like had it not been closed. Tullygarth Station is an island platform and caters for both passenger and freight. The layout has been recently modified to include an efficient fiddle yard, and the stock being used represents the 1985-1990 era. It features DCC sound. Laurencekirk, modelled in 00 gauge and exhibited by the Perth Model Railway Group. Laurencekirk is a town in the old county of Kincardineshire, now Aberdeenshire. The original station closed in 1965 as part of the Beeching Cuts, but was reopened in 2009 and is currently served by trains to and from Aberdeen. During the period modelled, the Strathmore line, which ran from Stanley Junction 7 miles north of Perth to Kinarba Junction near Montrose, was still a vital part of the railway network. Laurencekirk is situated just north of Kinarba Junction, where the east and west coast main lines met before reaching Aberdeen. The route saw many and varied locomotives and trains, including the final swan song of Gresley's A4 Pacifics on the 3-hour Glasgow to Aberdeen expresses. All the station area buildings are scratch built from plans and photographs supplied by various members of the Caledonian Railway Association and Keith Jones of the GNSR Association, whose kind assistance is much appreciated. The track and point work is Pico Code 100 and control is DC, with points operated via Tortoise motors. The signals are all built from brass kits.